Can the Tampa Bay Buccaneers repeat as NFC South champs in 2024? We're examining the state of the Bucs roster today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
Joseph, happy Monday to you here
Happy
on
Monday.
Locked On NFL Scouting.
Happy July.
Happy July, holiday week.
Yeah.
Celebrating America's birthday this week.
You know, Kyle, I thought I'd go my entire life without getting a phone call from a vegetable. But then, boom, onion rings.
All right, I'll see you later.
Yeah. It's a Bucs life, baby. It's a Bucs life. It's a Bucs life. Here we go. We're talking NFC South all week long, leading off with the division champion, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And what Kyle and I do every single summer is we take the time to assess every single roster in the NFL. We watch the film, we study the players, we study the metrics, and we categorize every single player, and we put them in a bucket. And those buckets are roster cornerstone, quality starter, rookie, adequate starter, replacement level, quality depth, non-roster caliber, incomplete evaluation, and practice squad developmental player. Each position is weighted in terms of importance. And at the end of the project, we have this consistently graded way of assessing all of the rosters. And this is the last division. So at the end of this week, we are going to see how all of the rosters stack up. And today is all about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We've spent our time preparing, and now it's time to show our work. Kyle Crabbs, Bucs offense, Baker Mayfield. What's your prevailing thought?
Why'd you do that?
What do you mean?
The onion rings thing. Why'd you do that?
Because I wanted to share a dad joke that I heard recently with you.
You did. Okay, so Tampa Bay. I like a lot of the competitiveness on the offensive line on this depth chart. You know, they have gone out and targeted a lot of young guys to the last several seasons, and yet what do they do with their first round pick? They draft Graham Barton and they draft another one. And it's like, so for me, the skill duo of Evans and Godwin's been well established for a long time. And they got a speedster in Trey Palmer who they got some action with. And the past few years, there have been investments in tight end in the middle rounds. They kind of catch the lightning in a bottle with a free agent quarterback who hadn't lived up to his previous play, and you assumed it was over. And well, no, you put him back in a good situation and he can do some nice things. But the entire engine of what Tampa Bay was last year was many times centered around running the football, even if it was at a low efficiency level. And Dave Canales talked extensively about that. And he's since moved on and he's still in the NFC South. We'll talk about his team on Thursday when we talk about the Panthers. If they're able to maintain the same mentality that they had last year, I think the offensive line has enough pieces. I like the 1 through 7 a lot that they have with Tristan Wirfs, Graham Barton, Luke Godecki, Cody Mauck, Robert Hainsey, Sua Opeta, Ben Bredesen. Like, that's a pretty solid group, and there's varying degrees of establishment. There's varying degrees of skill level. You obviously have an all-world player in Tristan Wirfs who made the transition to left tackle. That group's going to be the engine for them offensively, in my mind, and they have to perform. I think they have the horses up front and the depth up front to feel really good about that going into the season.
This is one of the most athletic offensive lines in the NFL. I mean, when you kind of just look at it from left to right, I mean, just like plus athletes all over the place. You can tell that's part of what they want to do is have that athleticism and mobility up front. And I mean, Graham Barton and Cody Mock and Luke Gadecki and Tristan Wirfs, these guys can move.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fun idea for, kind of your getting pullers going, wide zone. And obviously, they really found some things with Baker Mayfield last year. And I'm excited to see how that evolves this year. I know there's some new dynamics with no Dave Canales around, but I think that Baker Mayfield, ever since that like last season in Cleveland's kind of gotten an unfair deal where just every step of the way, I don't feel like there was good conversations around Baker Mayfield, and he was always a better player than kind of what he was given a chance to showcase. And there was injuries and just plenty of reasons as to why some of the performance wasn't where they wanted it to be. And I think that's to the benefit of the Bucs, right? They signed this guy for like a 1-year, $4 million contract.
Yeah, they're cheap.
Right? And that absolutely looks like a great decision. And I'm excited to see how, you think about receivers like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And I think that you benefit from having more experience and time and chemistry with them, right? They're both guys that have really, really plus ball skills. And I think ball placement and chemistry and just feeling each other out, I think that's going to be even better in year 2 as they've had more reps together. And then, what are we going to get from Trey Palmer, who got a little bit more run with this offense than maybe people thought. And now he's trying to get your 11 personnel. You're thinking it's probably Palmer, Godwin, and Evans on the field. And then, of course, what Rachaad White did. I mean, he had a big time breakout season last year, especially in the passing game. And they kind of doubled down on that skill set in some ways with Bucky Irving. So I'm interested to see how this comes together. We do have a little bit of transition on the offensive line at guard and center. Of course, Ryan Jensen and, the abrupt retirement that he was kind of forced into. That's a tough situation, but I kind of like the makeup of this offense and what they can build on. I think your question mark is, okay, schematically and Dave Canales and what he meant. How do we fare without that variable in place this coming season?
Right. I look at this group and I generally don't feel like they are hurting for the personnel that they need. Right. Is this the best offensive personnel group in the league? No, but they do have a couple cornerstones in Tristan Wirfs and Mike Evans and a rejuvenated Baker Mayfield like we saw last year. And Rachaad White got it going a little bit last year as a 3-down style back, even if the efficiency of those runs wasn't necessarily super high. I think there's a chance that that's better with Liam Cohen this year. But you have to be encouraged from a talent perspective, which is what we're looking at today specifically, that you look at what they have and you're like, yeah, they got a couple of quality starter plus guys at wide receiver. They got a cornerstone left tackle. They get the quarterback answer with a guy who played with all these guys last year and they know what he is. And you feel like there's a chance to replicate that. And they got young players in the backfield. And I like the Bucky Irving draft pick. And they got a couple tight ends that can block, and Otten and Kife to kind of help you in the run game, and Payne Durham we like coming out of Purdue. So everybody's maybe not necessarily in the same stage of their individual player developments, but the youth movement since the Brady era has brought a lot of promise, and they're going to continue to chance to get that to develop. And you don't feel like there's any glaring deficiencies, I think, is where my mind goes when I look at Tampa offensively.
Since nobody cares about your fantasy team, I feel inclined to let everybody know that I'm a dynasty owner of Bucky Irving. So
you get a lot of backs. That's the thing that I picked up about Joe Marino is he's got a lot of action with young backs in the league.
Stash him, brother. Stash him, and then you never know. And I'm living that right now with Zamir White. Here he is. Right. So yeah, every once in a while you get one of those. So between him and who's my guy? Why can't I not remember the guy? Is it Jalen Wright? Is that his name in tennis? Right. Okay, yeah. I don't know. I was brain farting there. Those are my next guys waiting in the wings. All right, let's shift gears here. We'll get to defense on the other side of it. A lot of transition there, honestly. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. So be sure to stick with us. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. Something for everyone every day, all summer long. And Kyle, I found some fun Bucks specials. I think there's a good chance. I think all three of these might hit. The over-under for Baker Mayfield passing yards, they have it at 3,500 and a half. Over, right? They have the over-under for Bucks wins in 2024 set at 7.5.
Probably over.
How about this one? They have the Bucks at plus 290 to win the NFC South. That's not even the bet. They have the Falcons at one.
Those are good odds.
Yeah.
Those are good odds.
I might take some of that if I were you. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and make the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
Defensively. Another couple cornerstones, which is a great place to start, right? I want to give those guys their flowers. Antoine WInfield Jr., highest paid defensive back in football for now. They got a couple corners that are coming up that we're probably going to have a little something to say about that. Lavonte David is just fine wine. Continues to get better with age. It's incredible how well he continues to. What was it 2 years ago that was like, oh, are they going to move on from Lavonte David? Is he going to go somewhere else?
Keeps taking nothing deals to come back, man.
Right, and he keeps playing at incredible. It's like annual basis. The best valued linebacker contract in football is Lavonte David at this point. He can still move. He's still great in coverage. The instincts, obviously, with as long as he's played, are off the charts. Just a delight to continue to see him playing at the level that he is. And when I think about the defense, I think you have a couple needle-moving players on each level. Give some flowers to Jordan Whitehead as the other safety who came back in free agency. I think that's a great add for them. And they even said that, right?
Yeah.
Like, letting Whitehead go was a mistake. We go ahead and corrected that this offseason, brought him back after the year that he had with the Jets. Jamel Dean, another quality starter. And then Lavonte David on the second level, like we mentioned, then Vita Fea up front are all quality starter plus needle-moving type talents that are really going to be the backbone for the Bucs defensively. And all that's, or most of that, I should say, is right up the middle. It's a team that's strong up the middle.
The comment I want to make here is about the defense, but it's also about the Bucs in general. This team has some players that have been tenured. And you mentioned Lavonte David, who is entering his 13th season with the Buccaneers. William Golston is entering his 12th season with the Buccaneers, and Mike Evans on offense is entering his 11th season with the Buccaneers. Is there another team in the NFL that has three players that have been on the team for 10 or more seasons? I mean, that's just,
I cannot imagine that's true.
I
don't think my team's got anybody since 2019.
Right. I think that's probably not all that rare, man. This team, and it's not like they haven't had coaching transition and stuff like that. So they've had plenty of tenure here. But yeah, I think the anchors of this defense are well established. I'm curious about kind of filling in the blanks. Like, how much of a step do we get from up front from Calijah Kancey in year 2, who showed pass rush ability, but the same run stuffing concerns that, existed with him coming out of Pitt. You saw those manifest themselves in year 1. What do we get from Yaya Diaby? I mean, he flashed late in the season, got more opportunity, and looked pretty good. He's unbelievably athletic. What can we unlock there? Big year for Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who I think, is he going to be a sub rusher or is he going to be a full-time player? Does he, warrant that? Logan Hall in year 3. This is a high pick, right? Like top 35 pick. Hasn't really come along. I think those are some of the players that I look at, particularly in the front. KJ Britt, right? Like, been a backup for a while. You no longer have Devin White, which I think is a great thing. We can celebrate that if we're Tampa Bay. But like, what do we have in KJ Britt? What about Zyon McCullum, who's been like a backup for like 2 years, got a chance to start late in the season, flashy, but we just don't know. I think that's the theme across this defense is like guys that have been around for a few years. They're young,
very reliable, tenured guys that are impact players, or young guys that are all now having opportunities to do or don't for the Bucs.
Right. Right.
And
So
I think the good thing is you generally have enough competition in all of those rooms that you'd like to think like you're going to get a certain floor of performance from every room. It's just who's the guy going to be that ultimately ends up stepping up to give it.
Right. Todd Bowles can scheme it up, right?
Yeah.
I think they'll be put in great opportunities, but the margins of this defense, man, it's got to be as significant as any team out there. Like when you see the room for upward mobility, and you say this a lot, like you're not going to bat 1,000. Not everything that I just said is not going to work out.
Yep.
But how much of it does, I think that's going to go a long way in figuring out how good this defense can be. But you do like, you know what you got in Vita Fea. You know what you got in Jamel Dean, David, Antoine WInfield Jr. I feel like you know what you have in Jordan Whitehead. So it's nice to have that, all those unknowns offset by, okay, yeah, these guys are really solid players that we feel good about.
So if we just compartmentalize and we look at the secondary, right? Or the back seven, let's do the back seven. Cornerstone WInfield Jr. can do everything. Best, if not the best safety, a top 3 best safety of football.
We put him tier within the tier.
Yeah, like an elite of elite.
Yeah, not an all-pro or anything, or Pro Bowl. What do you?
Dumb. Jordan Whitehead, we have a quality starter, right? We have another cornerstone in Lavonte David. We have another quality starter in Jamel Dean. You have Christian Izien as a second-year player who flashed big time for that. Like looks like a player,
right?
Okay, so you have the other outside corner spot with a young guy who's stepping in Zyon McCullum, and you have another linebacker at like the least valued position in football, who's a young player who's stepping in to replace a guy who, frankly, was replacement level player down the stretch, and Devin White. Like
I think Devin White hurt their defense, candidly.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So replacement level player.
Yeah.
So if you look at the Bucs defense through that lens, and you know all the bodies that can play up front and all the different rush plans and the blitz packages, knowing that that's what Bowles is working with to kind of serve as the skeleton of everything he does, they got shot. Yeah.
Well, especially in this division, like obviously we'll flesh it out throughout the course of the week, but like I'm not taking Carolina seriously. I don't really like the Saints. Atlanta's interesting, but
interesting, but it's all new. Right?
Defense,
so like, how's that going to go for you this year? It's hard to say.
Like you got to. I feel like Tampa Bay might kind of be the cream of the crop here, even if they have their own like level of variability with range of outcomes for so many different players. But I think you go back to loving Todd Bowles as a defensive mind. Maybe you have some questions about him overall as a head coach or whatever, but like you're not questioning his ability on defense. And I kind of like the hand he's dealt here. I think it'll be on him to make this all work and come together. And there's a lot of continuity with that coaching staff on defense as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a thought on Todd Bowles I want to give you, but we'll do it after the break.
All right. So be sure to stick with us. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. It might look like they have it all together on their Instagram, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. Therapy is helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It's not just for those who've experienced major trauma. So stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
So my thought with Todd Bowles is this. He survived the hard part, right?
Yeah.
With Bruce Arians and his retirement and the transition to Todd, but like that team really had like a difficult roster transition in the midst of Todd taking over. And then they had the season that they did last year, and they figure out the quarterback situation with what they did with Baker. And I just, it's really cool to see them come out the other side of it. And you're like, okay, like the hard part should theoretically be over. And that's not to say that they won't have their struggles and they don't have their questions, but like you looked at Tampa last year and you're like, that could get really dicey. And well, who was it? Was it Connor Orr for SI that got called out was it at the combine? Did you see that?
Maybe if you talk a little bit more about it, I know, but it's not.
It was Jason Light went up to somebody at the combine and like this guy was going to do an interview with him. He was like, "Oh yeah, you're the guy that had us at 2 wins last year. I had your prediction on my desk for the entire season."
Unbelievable. Hey, Jason Light keeps the receipts, man. We know that.
He does.
Yeah.
Yep. He's one of the few executives that is happy to be active on social media, right? Like,
would this be you if you were a general manager? Would you follow it?
No, I'd get the heck off of that because I wouldn't want to see everybody calling for my job anytime anything that I did didn't work out perfectly in the first 5 seconds that I did it. Are you kidding me? Microwave society that we live in, you think if I was in a position and not have to be on social media, I'd be gone in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was Jason cashed that receipt at the combine, which was really funny. But how did we get here?
You had a thought on Todd Bowles and surviving the hard part.
Surviving, but how do we get on Todd Bowles or how do we get on Jason Light in receipts?
Connor Orr, and he said he had the tweet. They had him at two wins on his
keep
desk.
Going back to the thing that I know, I don't remember how we got on Connor Orr.
You said that it was his tweet.
I'm aware. I don't know how I got on the story. You keep giving me information for the thing I already know. I don't know how we got into this whole branch that we went on.
I feel like those are the nuggets I should have nudged you in the way of knowing what the heck you were talking about.
It mattered. My point was Todd Bowles survived the hard part. You thought it could get dicey last year. There were people that had the Bucks predicted to win 2 games. I don't think we were particularly high on the Bucks either. I don't think we had them at 2. But
I mean, last summer we're talking about Kyle Trask legitimately competing with Baker Mayfield to be the starter.
Right.
Well, how did that play out? I mean, Baker Mayfield was coming. He played for 2 different teams the year before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
including starting with like 4 days notice for the Rams and winning that game.
I remember I was with Baker. I remember I tweeted it out at some point where I was like, how many different teams is Baker Mayfield going to be a day one starter for? Like, it was the list was kind of growing. I was like, has anybody ever done this for 3 different teams? And like, you're still pretty good. Who was I listening to your interview with Kurt Warner? And he was talking about the like how difficult it is to go from like one team and be good and then go to another team and be good. Mm-hmm. Like and I think you've seen that like with Watson, with Russell Wilson, like your organization is keenly aware of everything that you are as a player, right? Like,
right.
And can craft things around you. And I think it says a lot about Baker Mayfield. And obviously we're looking for sustained success, right? Like he's got to stack seasons and all that type of stuff, but he's going to have that opportunity. And, I mean, like, was everything great in Cleveland? No, but did he have great seasons? Yeah, he sure did. Like, you're lying to yourself if you're going to act like a couple of those seasons weren't really, really good. And so even with a player like Baker, who's he's nuanced, right? Like he's a unique player within the realm of football, for him to be able to like have success somewhere else, I think would say a lot about him. And I don't know, I like Baker Mayfield, so I'm excited and rooting for him.
And I guess there's some interesting overlaps with Baker and what he's going to be this year for Tampa Bay with Liam Cohen. And Liam Cohen was with the Rams for a bit. He was Kentucky, and then he went to the Rams, and then he went back to Kentucky, and now he's with the Bucks. And like, there's at least some familiarity with everything that Baker had to stop in LA. But I think about Canales' offense, and Canales' offense is, we're going to, I don't care if we get 2.5 yards. We're going to run the ball, and we're going to run the ball, and we're going to force you to respect the box. And then we are going to play action off of that. And when you have ball skills guys like Godwin and Evans, and what Baker's good at, like Baker's not really a gouge you consistently over the middle of the field type guy. He's not really an high level anticipation thrower, but he's got zip and pop on his arm. He's really aggressive pushing the ball. He can get you and win your one-on-one situations on the outside and throw with accuracy there if he's on time. So for Baker, I thought last year's system really lended itself well to putting Baker back in a position to be successful. And then you get in the playoff game and you got to go 2-minute offense, and you kind of see some of the limitations, and that's the unfortunate reality for everybody not named Patrick Mahomes and maybe like 3 other guys, right? It's like everybody has their own unique individual handcuffs. And for Baker to go from place to place and have them not really give him the time to figure it out to put them around it, like you said, I at least appreciate he had the entire season last year in Tampa Bay. They've gotten to know him a little bit. They have a feel for what he does well. Interested to see how they try to build off of it, because that is a multi-pronged, multi-year effort. You don't just bring the guy in and click unless you're the Broncos and you sign Peyton Manning, right? And or you're the Bucks and you sign Tom Brady because you signed a generational all-time type guy. If you're not working with those kinds of animals, it needs a little bit more time to materialize. Baker hasn't really been given that. He finally gets in a place where it kind of meshes early on. I'm fascinated to see what it looks like if they try to piggyback off of that.
3-7 start into a division title and going to the postseason, obviously. I think the schedule for Tampa Bay this year is very, very interesting. They get a week 11 bye. And in the first 10 games before the bye, they go at Detroit. They host Philadelphia. They have both of their Falcons games. They play at Atlanta Thursday Night Football week 5, and then they host them in week 8 a couple weeks later. They get Baltimore in there, at Kansas City, San Francisco, and their road date in New Orleans.
This is, man, first place schedule, huh? That sucks.
Dude, especially because this is their division that they face, they play the West, right? The AFC West.
Yep.
So they get Kansas City. But then they get Baltimore as well as their courtesy extra AFC game.
Right. At least that's home. But
right.
I'll say this. I feel like they should be probably favored in 6 of their 7 games after the bye.
Right. So how much damage can we control?
Yeah. Damage control early.
You go 5-5 for that first 10. You might feel pretty decent about that. And then I think they could literally, could they win 6 of their last 7?
I think at Dallas is the tough one after the bye.
Right, but that's it. You
feel like they should win. They get the Panthers twice. They get the
Giants.
They get the Chargers. They get the
They're
Saints at home.
Yeah. So get through that opening 10.
If you're 4-6, I think you've given yourself a chance.
You can get to 10 wins. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Don't be less than 4. Don't be 3-7.
Yeah, if you're Bucks fans, it's a race before the bye, race to 4 wins. Get there as soon as possible. And if you get that minimum before the bye, you should feel good about your chances.
Washington, let's beat Washington. Let's beat Denver. Both of those games are at home. Let's get at least one against Atlanta and then one more somewhere else.
Yep. We'll see. We have who's tomorrow? I know who's in last.
Whatever team finished second, Kyle Crabbs. That's the team we're doing tomorrow.
And then we'll do the team that finished third on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then we'll do the Panthers on Thursday.
Yeah.
And then we'll do the tier maker on Friday. That's this week here on Locked on NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. Have a good one. We'll talk to y'all again tomorrow.